Welcome to the Business Transformation Pitch. I am Greg, the CX goalkeeper, bringing you conversations where transformation, leadership, and customer experience meet to create real impact. Did you know 80% of regular listeners haven't subscribed yet? If you enjoy the show, support us by hitting the subscribe button. I promise we will keep raising the bar with the guests, ideas, and strategies that really matter to you. Because in business, just like in football, this conversation could be the game changer. I am Greg's AI assistant. In this episode, Greg had the pleasure of diving deep into the world of serving ultra-high net worth individuals with Christopher Brooks. They explored the MEPA framework, which includes managing expectations, creating extraordinary experiences, ensuring post-purchase care, and achieving time savings. Christopher shared some fascinating insights and stories about how these principles are applied in luxury sectors, revealing the art and science behind creating exceptional customer experience. Enjoy it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business Transformation Pitch with the CX Goalkeeper. Today I'm really thrilled because I have Christopher Brooks together with me, and we are going to discuss about something special, something that for a lot of us is magic. It's the secret rule of serving ultra wealthy, ultra high net worth individuals. That's a completely different word, but at the same time, it's similar, because I was listening to a podcast between Christopher Brooks and Professor Phil Klaus, I think 5-7 years ago, and they were discussing about buying a yacht. And at the end, it's exactly the same like buying a toothpaste, but the context, it's completely different. Principles are the same. And therefore, really thrilled to have you, Chris. How are you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Gregorio. Thank you so much. It's a delight to be back with you and great to be talking on this particular topic.
Thank you very much. As usual, we start learning a bit more about today's top player, Christopher Brooks. If your career were a soccer match, what has been your biggest goal so far?
Well, I think I have to say winning a trophy is important in football. And we won a trophy last year for Best International Customer Experience Award Program. And why is that important? Why is that significant? Because it is your peers giving you the seal of approval to say what you do is validated and is proved to be successful. And obviously, having done this for 25 odd years, I would like to think that what we do is highly successful, but getting that validation, like winning the FA Cup or the Jules Rimet Trophy, for me was important.
That's so cool, and you deserve it. What is the mission you are playing nowadays when it comes to serving ultra net worth high individuals?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, yeah, we've got clientele, may call them, but as you rightly say, they're customers at the end of the day, but the context does change. So with Lexington Lux, which is serving those individuals or brands supporting those individuals, it's about creating kind of an architect to protect, also to amplify and future-proof organizations who are serving ultra high net worth individuals. It's a real art and science when it comes to building experience, and that's the mission we're on at the moment. Is to ensure that the legacy of those ultra high net worth individual brands is the connection with their clients. That's the legacy.
I have already 200 questions, therefore let's start the match and understanding better what we're discussing about. Now, we already mentioned several times, ultra high net worth individuals. I think it's important also that perhaps you define them, which categories of client we are speaking about.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess from a demographic perspective, you're talking about a wealth of 30 million or more. But as we'll unfold, what we realize is that is, whilst that's one criteria, that's an entry criteria, but it actually means that the dynamics of that world change significantly when you have access to things that most people don't. And some of the expectations that you have at that level are very different, because many of the things in the world, in fact, everything in the world is attainable to you. So your definition of what's important changes significantly.
And we're speaking about experience excellence for usual customer, but what does it mean, experience excellence for such type of customers?
Yeah, it's client management excellence. It's about understanding, as you do with any client, what matters most. I've been very fortunate. You mentioned Professor Clausen. He's a co-founder of Lexington Lux with me. We've invested in understanding what matters most to ultra high worth individuals, and 400 interviews later, if you can imagine, I just said the category. These are not easy people to access, but given certain conditions, we've made it possible. And as a consequence of which, we've been able to codify what matters most to these individuals. And it comes up again and again and again. And there are 4 leading principles. We call it the MEPA framework. It's quite well recognized that it's about, M is about managing expectations. And we'll come on to, some of these may feel generic, but what that means in this market is very different. The E stands for extraordinary experiences. And we created a book last year called The Ultimate Experience, which contains 20 stories from ultra high net worth individual brands. And it's a different level of extraordinary experience. The third, and this is more recognizable, but actually is very important and often overlooked, is called the post-purchase care. Yeah. If you think about the market we're in, we're talking about high transactional value purchasing. And we're saying that the priority is the post-purchase care. And the fourth, and arguably the most important, is to achieve time savings. It is probably the most important currency, along with trust, privacy, but time, achieving time savings is such an important currency for the ultra high net worth individual.
Let's unpack this MEPA code, MEPA framework. First is managing expectation. Could you please elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, so it is really important to make sure that the ultra high net worth individual has a full appreciation of what's coming. Surprises, not interested in them. They want to make sure that everything that they understand is going to be delivered. If you take a super yacht, for instance, there's a kind of a saying that there's 2 days owning a super yacht are the best 2 days. And that is buying the super yacht and selling the super yacht. And one of the reasons is that those who are getting into buying super yachts haven't had their expectations managed in terms of what it involves to run a super yacht, which is like a company. It's a project. In there is managing staff. In there is taxation, import charges, everything you would not perceive is going to actually then drain all that excitement and value, energy, and the memories you intended to make. So managing people's expectations is really, really important. So that becomes exactly what they understand it will be. If you were to arrive at a luxury jeweler's and you know exactly what you want and you get there and it's not there, but instead they will make you some drinks, some expensive canapes, and spend time talking to you about it and saying, but it's not here. That, again, is you didn't manage my expectations. I would have chosen to organize my day very differently. So helping to manage expectations is absolutely fundamental.
That's very interesting. Also, that such clientele doesn't like surprises, because I think nothing can really surprise them. As you said, they can buy everything. And therefore, I think I would like to really understand what you mean with extraordinary experiences.
So these are highly personalized, hyper personalized. If you think about luxury, there's luxuries. is probably an overused expression, and I have this quite often with others who are kind of say, "Oh, we're a luxury brand," and there's a real distinction between where we're talking about. What we're talking about is scarcity, not scalability. Kind of keeping things really, really scarce. We're talking about making it not aspirational, but actually unattainable. To most of us, these experiences are not attainable. We're talking about craft, being artisan first. That's hyper-personalization, not digitalization, not digital first, scalability, automation. And we're talking about being invisible. Conspicuous is not luxury. Showing wealth is not luxury. Invisibility is where it needs to be. So as a consequence of which, the types of experiences we're talking about are very individual. We've got in our book fragments of these extraordinary stories. They are locked away. They are not for public consumption. It is an invitation-only 220-page book. And there's a reason for that, because each of the organizations we work with have shared their secrets. But I will reveal a fragment of one to show what a hyper-personalized experience looks like, but I won't mention who it was. It's a particular hotel where the husband was there with his wife. They'd taken over the hotel for one night only for their whole family because it was a big anniversary celebration. And his wife and himself, when they were much younger, were traveling in an old Fiat convertible, and they saw a car, beautiful, rare Porsche. And his wife said to him, "If we ever dare to dream bigger." He carried that thought forever until he got to this moment when he spoke to the hotel manager and said, "I've bought the car. My wife said if we ever dared to dream bigger, I'd like it for the anniversary present. Please, can you make it available so that when we come down for breakfast or something, we can see it?" And he said, "That is not the experience your wife deserves. Her whole life, she's been waiting for this moment." So he organized overnight the car to be lifted up across the hotel and to be positioned outside their room, facing out onto their private pool. So in the morning, when they woke up and the husband said, "Happy anniversary," he was able to say to her, "We did dare to dream bigger." And then she opened the curtain and there was her gift. And that's the level of personalization we're talking about here. That is an extraordinary experience. Who saw it? 2 people. Who knew about it? Very few people. But it symbolized why that family chose that hotel. And there's many other stories from that hotel in the way they actually operate to recognize what's important. That's an extraordinary achievement to deliver that, which was a simple moment that has currency with one family. And that's what the extraordinary experience is about when it comes to MEPA. They're very, very personal.
That's so interesting. And touching to the third topic, post-purchase care. Can you share a bit more about that?
Yeah, so post-purchase care is really, really important to make sure that there's a recognition, there's a long-term lasting relationship here. And another client is in vintage wines. So you would have a cellar that's allocated to you, and in this area, you sometimes talk about wines as for the palate or as an asset. So kind of, you're a connoisseur of the wines, or it may be an investment portfolio for the future. And like most organizations, you'll have memberships that come together. But you have memberships based on taste and culture, because you don't want to be having a wine experience with someone who says, "This isn't to my taste." You want to be in a room with people who enjoy the same things that you do. So you like your wines, you understand your wines, you invest in your wines. What you don't want to have a situation is then when you're in a restaurant or a guest at a hotel, that you have to choose other wines because you know what wines you like. So a good example of post purchase care is having the service that you are understood where you're going to be in the world. You're going to be at this particular property. You're going to be on this yacht. And your wine travels before you. So your wine will arrive at the destination that you're going to come to next. You'll settle down and then you'll be able to enjoy the wine. So that's after you've made the engagement, the acquisition, and down the line, this is the way in which you'll experience it, the post-purchase care.
And now let's touch on the last topic, active time savings. And here I wonder, I can understand that, but I wonder because we all read the experience economy. They're speaking about time well saved, time well spent, time well invested. And now you're saying we need to save time for these clients who try network.
Yeah, they don't want to be in a situation where time is wasted for them. They've got to make sure that every moment is organized effectively. And that, again, is really understanding the rhythm of the client's life to make sure you can fit in and you can fulfill their requirements. So a good example, again, from the book is a bespoke tailors. And they were approached by a client who said, I'm going to a dinner. I want the combination of Cary Grant and modern Milan. That's the look I'm looking for. It's in a couple of weeks. It's going to happen. They said, okay, fine. Let's make this happen. There and then they were in a beautiful hotel owned by Andrea Bocelli in Miami. And they converted one of the rooms to kind of a pop-up area for themselves. And they did the measuring. That then started the clock. What they then did was they tracked where the client was going to be in the world over the next 2 weeks. And they made sure that at the points of the first and the second fitting, they arrived to be there as he was there. He didn't have to make a detour anywhere. He arrived where they arrived. They did the first fitting, which was in a residency of his in Milan. And then the second fitting happened. And then the team, 24 hours before the event in New York, flew out and met him in his suite. So they were able to dress him. So he hasn't missed a beat there. Everyone has organized themselves around him to make sure that his time was completely well managed.
That's so interesting to understand how ultra network individuals are living, are working. You mentioned at the beginning 2 words that I would like to quickly click on that. First is trust. How can you build trust for such type of clientele?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to do with kind of the way you behave. We do a training course for frontline staff. So those who are interacting, whether it's yacht brokers or supercar dealerships or in retailers. And there's some of the things that you need to do when you're kind of behaving is really important. So you observe first. You don't talk. You listen, you understand what's going on. In fact, you're the last to talk. You make sure that you remove friction quietly. You don't make a fuss about this. You just make sure this happens in the background. And you exit gracefully. These are the ways, by not being, if you're noisy and you're upfront and you're noticed, you will not win trust. By being a part of their lives, you start to earn trust. And also by living your values. It's really, really important. One of the organizations is a hypercar company. And they're very, very selective about who will have their cars. You can't just say, I've got all this money in the world, I want one. That's not an entry criteria for them. And the reason this is because you're going to build the car together. And therefore, you're going to need to trust them implicitly. So they need to know you're serious about this. And they make sure that every interaction you have with them demonstrates that. A good example is when it comes to their marketing material, their advertising, they don't trust the environment to anyone else. They own everything you see in their advertising. They own the land in the background. They own the roads that you see the cars on. They own the castles. It's important that you trust this is 100% us. So you have to live and breathe and demonstrate these things in everything that you do. Not just the the fabulous moments, but in each and every aspect of the lives. If you're an organization who's dealing with the taxation of yachts, you've got to think about making sure that before they get to the destination, the paperwork is there ready to go. A bit like, time savings, you have to live those MEPA attributes, regardless of what part of the organization you're supporting. One of them is they produce mattresses, mattresses or sleep systems, as we like to call them. And they actually provide these to very few hotels in the world. It's for individuals. A lot of royalty have them. It's individuals. To go to the hotel wanted to have it. They needed to make sure their customers could trust these are still bespoke and really cared for. So the hotel's entire staff who would be interacting with the mattress were flown by the company to their factory and their offices, and they spent a week learning how to care for the mattress. So you invest heavily in these areas. You see it in lots of other ways in the private aviation sector, where they will send their staff to butler training school to make sure it's the highest level. That's how you're gaining the trust, is every aspect of the experience lives up to the highest level, because perfection is something the ultra high net worth individual can buy. They can have Philip Stark to design their house. It's no problem. So perfection is something that's a commodity. I can buy perfection. So you're going beyond that. Right first time, these sort of things are maybe in other experiences we aspire to, to not have workarounds and not have queries. Perfection is what their lives look like. So therefore, it's really important you're going beyond that.
Let's talk this word perfection and pause on it, because I have one question before speaking about perfection. Speaking about security, about privacy, I think this is a big topic for this company to support, be part of this ultra network individual and then disappear again. What is your view on that?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, privacy is really, really important. It's why, as we're talking here, I've not revealed the brands that are in the book. These are secrets. You have to respect that. And if you are to have the connection you need to have, the deep intimacy, then you have to build the trust, and you have to keep that private. You have to. One of the organizations we work, this lovely expression, hyper personalization is the ultimate demonstration of respect. And I can't get there unless you trust me to be very quiet and secure with your information. I remember once, Gregory, I was invited by a very well-known luxury brand on Bond Street. And I was invited to their wonderful shop, the retail outlet, which has been there for many, many years. And I was shown some fabulous things there, the staircase and who'd come down the staircase at a party. And there is an area there where there's a private cinema that had been used. And it's incredible, the stories they were telling about how James Bond used to go there before they went on to set and everything. And then I purchased something and I went over to pay for it. And there behind the till were all these A4 folders with customers' names written on them. And it just broke everything.
Yes.
That privacy lost. It just, all of a sudden, what became very clear was this whole thing is a facade. It's called luxury, but actually it's not deeply rooted in the organization's DNA. And, for me, it just broke it completely. You cannot operate a front of house that demonstrates ultra high net worth individual connections if the back of the house is not doing the same.
You're right, but exactly this is the topic about perfection. In this case, it was not the perfect experience, even if everything is possible for this type of customers. And you shared a lot of story, and I'm really thankful because I know that you are not often sharing these stories, and you're sharing them on my podcast. Is there a story that you can share that perhaps the experience on not everything happened as expected? What did happen?
Yeah, well, I guess I've got an interesting story which I think probably suggests how you can get it wrong. and it's to do with a super yacht company in Monaco. Invited their clients along to a special evening, and another evening they managed to park their yacht up the back of it to just in the marina. They'd taken over an apartment, and all their clients came in there. And there, on the back of the boat, was one of the world's #1 pop stars. Fabulous. Apart from the fact everyone who was there could afford to have this individual privately in their own residence if they did so choose. And that's where that kind of making it conspicuous, because everyone could see what was going on as well there. So what it looks like is, we might say, well, that's fabulous, because normally you go to a great big concert and you have lots and lots of people there. This is a small group of people. But they're not thinking like that. They're thinking, well, actually, it looks like we will club together to get this individual onto the boat. And it's the opposite effect of what's trying to be achieved. So you can get it really, really wrong if you don't understand what matters most to those individuals.
That's so interesting. It was really a great discussion. Thank you very much for sharing these secrets, these insights about the world of luxury, ultra net worth individual. At the end, I have my usual question. It's Christopher Golden Nugget, or perhaps I can say Christopher Diamond Nugget to make it a bit more luxury. Is there something that we discussed or we did not discuss that you would like to share to the audience?
Well, I guess I would say dare to dream bigger is what I would say when it comes to any type of experience. And also, if you want to understand what luxury experience looks like, you need to look beyond where you're probably looking, because it happens quietly, it happens discreetly, and it happens intimately. And there's a reason for that, because it's not going to be repeated. A lot of these things kind of won't be repeated. And for me, there's a model I'm a big fan of, the flow model, where you use a Hungarian American psychologist. I can't remember his name, but it's about having the tools and then having the topic. And for me, what's been really useful about Lexington Lux is I've had the toolkit, but the topic, there's not been one that I launched many years ago, the American Express Centurion card, sort of 30 years ago as part of a team. That's where my passion for this space came from. I could see what could be achieved. And I just developed, like we are in customer experience, a deep curiosity for the topic. I never stop learning. So every day I'm gathering a new story, and I'm just examining that story, forensically pulling apart, dissecting it, looking at how it aligns back to the MEPA framework. These stories aren't easy to find. I mean, the ones in the book, we had to commission ourselves. We had to go and meet the clients and work with the clients and spend time with them, gaining their trust for them to share the secrets. We had to live the experience out ourselves. So I think that's probably those two things: is take yourself out of that comfort zone of flow sometimes, topics that are not so familiar, but also remember you are a role model for the experience that you're hoping to deliver to your clients. That's no different for us at Lexington Lux.
Thank you very much, Chris. I can confirm it was an incredible discussion. I also worked for American Express. It's different.
You remember Centurion? You remember Centurion?
Yes, very well.
It had the criteria. If you were a pop star, journalist, footballer, you weren't allowed in. It made things unattainable. It was really, initially, it was a very interesting concept.
I think it's still a very interesting concept, a bit broader, but it's really incredible to see, understand, and get a feeling of this type of business. It can be American Express Centurion card. It's a black card for the people who doesn't know that, and also working with private banks in Switzerland. It's a different business, and I'm super thankful, Chris, that you shared all these insights. We are coming to an end of this discussion. Chris, please stay with me. It was a great pleasure. To the audience, I hope that you enjoyed this discussion. It was a different one, but it was so insightful. I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did. Thank you very much, and bye-bye. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this episode, please spread the word. It really helps. And remember, 80% of regular listeners haven't subscribed yet. If you enjoyed the show, the easiest way to support us is by hitting that subscribe button. I promise we will keep raising the bar with the guests, ideas, and strategies that matter most to you. Until next time, never forget, we are not in B2B or B2C, we are in H2H, human-to-human environment. Thank you.